Hello. This yin yoga practice is another of my flower sequences, which means the practice starts off with several asymmetrical yin postures on one side. It has a symmetrical posture in the middle, and then do the same other side of the same asymmetrical postures on the other side. The postures will include half frog, shoelace pose with a lateral bend, twisting dragon, and saddle pose is a symmetrical postures. And as always, there will be modifications for these postures. Useful props might be books or blocks, particularly for twisting dragon. Also, some sort of padding for height, like pillows or blankets. Maybe a yoga bolster, if you have a yoga bolster. And the story I will be telling during the practice will be the classic Greek mythological story about Andromeda. So to begin practice, find a comfortable seat. Find your seat. It needs to be something that feels stable and supported. It can be something similar to how I'm sitting, but maybe a different way to sit feels better for you. It has to be a seat where your torso is open enough to where you can breathe freely and comfortably. So if that's not the case now, give yourself the power and the permission to kind of move around and see if you can find that space. Maybe you need to bring your spine to a nice neutral position. So we do that by feeling as if we're growing the spine long. Maybe you can roll your shoulders up and back just to open up the upper front part of the chest, and then notice your inhales and exhales. And for the next few moments, bring yourself into the present moment by noticing the environment around you, both the external environment, the room you're in, the air temperature, the sounds you're hearing, and your internal environment. So the physical sensations that you might be experiencing, but maybe even more importantly, the emotional and the mental sensations, the thoughts, and they're all part of your experience, all part of the present moment. And at some point, maybe begin to focus and settle in on your breath. So notice the cycling of breath here. We'll practice 3-part breathing here. So you have a choice. You have a choice to either just continue just noticing and softening your body and your mind as you use your breath to do that. Or you can try the practice of a deeper 3-part breathing just to bring a little bit of mental discipline and extra focus onto the breath here. So the first stage of this is notice if your nostrils are clear, if your nose is clear, and if you can breathe through your nose. If you can, then seal your lips and just breathe naturally through your nose. If your nose is stuffy, then obviously continue breathing through your mouth. The next stage is begin to lengthen your inhales and your exhales. Not dramatically, but just a little bit more than what your normal natural breath is. And then if this is all still feeling comfortable, you can maybe decide to try this visualization of building a 3-part breath to build a more complete and full breath. So on your next exhale a little bit more out, maybe even slightly pull your belly into your spine. And then when you inhale, visualize yourself filling up the very bottom of your torso. So the first third of your abdomen is filling up. And then continue to inhale and fill up the middle part of your torso. And then continue to breathe and fill up the upper part, the top ribs of your torso, and then exhale from top to bottom. So you're reversing the process. As you exhale, you release the top part of your rib cage, your torso. Exhale and release the middle of the rib cage. Exhale and release the lower abdomen. And then on the next cycle of the inhale, you start over, fill up the first third, And then you inhale, fill up the belly button and the lower ribs. Inhale and fill up the upper ribs. And then exhale and release the upper ribs, release the middle torso, release the low abdomen. And then inhale, fill the low abdomen. Inhale, fill the middle torso. Inhale, fill the upper chest. And then exhale, release the upper chest. Exhale, release the middle torso. Exhale and release the lower abdomen, and then continue this 3 parts of completely filling up your torso on each inhale, and then releasing each of those 3 parts on the exhale. If this feels too strainful, then drop it. Just come back to a normal natural breath for a while until you feel like it's comfortable and you're getting enough air into your system. This is not meant to be an agonizing experience. It's meant to create focus and a little bit of exercising the lungs and the muscle tissue that support the lungs, primarily the diaphragm, which does almost all of the breathing for almost all of us here. So decide if this is feeling okay for you, or maybe you need to modify. And maybe finally, some of us or most of us realize what we're doing is we're creating in these 3 parts one giant breath wave. So at some point, maybe you can drop the 3 different segments, and now you can breathe as one giant wave in on the inhale. And then that wave passes and moves away on the exhale. You can maybe think of the surf coming in on a beach. Surf moving in is the inhale. Surf moving out is this exhale. So a few more breaths here. And maybe if you felt tension creeping back into your head and your face and your mouth and your jaw, use this giant wave of breath to soften those areas. And then when you're feeling ready, maybe you had your eyes closed, so you can open up your eyes. We'll start out with some seated twists before we get into the really long-held yin postures. So bring your hands on either side of your torso, and then on a big inhale and sweep your arms up in a big giant circle, and grow your spine and your arms long as if you're reaching up towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale, move into a twist. So twist over to the right and slowly lower your arms to the ground. Maybe the right hand finds the floor behind you. The left hand maybe finds your thigh or your knee here. Next inhale, grow up tall to create space in your torso. And then exhale, see if you can deepen your twist just a little bit. So it doesn't have to be dramatic. It's just seeing if there's a little bit more room to twist more deeply, and there might not be, in which case it's all right. You just reside there. So one more breath here in this twist. And then gently come back to center. We'll do the big sweeping circle thing again here. So arms on either side of your torso, and then inhale, grow your spine, your torso long and your arms long, and then exhale and twist to the other side here. So same procedure here. Give yourself time to settle and set up for the twist. So if you're feeling a little bit scrunched, then see if you can use the inhale to create space and openness. Collarbones are wide here. And you can see if you can gently go a little bit deeper on and exhale. And then maybe reside here for a breath. And then gently come back to center. If you need to, you can do a little bit of a counter twist to work out the kinks that might have set up. And then we'll set up for the first yin posture. So the first yin posture is called half frog pose. Pose. So you'll start out legs out in front. And by the way, if you have a lot of tightness in the backs of your legs and your low back, feel free to find a little bit of padding or height to put under your sits bones to draw your pelvic bone up higher and slightly forward, and that probably will feel more comfortable here. Notice I'm sitting up on a blanket here. Bend your left knee and draw your left heel on the outside of your left hip. Draw the left knee out to the side. Take notice here of how this is feeling. For some of us, this is probably not going to happen. If you're feeling too much sharp biting pain in the knee or the ankle, or maybe even in the hip joint somewhere, maybe this posture is not for you, in which case try half butterfly instead. It's a different posture, but maybe it's a little bit more accessible. So for half butterfly, bend the knee, draw the heel in towards the center of the hip. This is an externally rotated leg now, but if it's more accessible to practice, that's a better way to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to stick with this half frog leg. The right leg can move out to the right a few inches. Take care of uncomfortable pressure points. If the knee is floating, then feel free to put extra padding underneath this knee. Maybe this knee needs to have a micro bend in it to keep out too much strain in the extended right leg. And then you can stay here if you're feeling a lot. Or if you want more, you can add the forward bend to this. So you kind of turn, face the right leg, and then maybe start hinging from your hips first to kind of move the top of your pelvic bone forward. And then once that's done, you can relax the muscle fiber in the rest of your torso structure to let your spine just gently round. And you stop wherever you stop. So you just go until you can't go anymore. So everything stops. You're trying to soften and relax. Now, if this creates too much pain, just hanging in midair here, this is where you grab extra padding to find a more comfortable position here. So this is where you start grabbing your pillows or your bolsters or your blocks here. Or maybe you decide that you just want to kind of stay upright. So find the position that works for you. This is all part of the process of finding our edge, which is the first principle or mechanic of a yin practice. We all have a unique and diverse body type, and so our edge in each of these postures is going to look and feel very different. And you need to keep that in mind, in that the focus of a yin class is not how it looks. The focus of it is how it's feeling, which means you have to move by feel and stop at some place that's appropriate for you, wherever that stopping place is, and then you notice, you pay attention to and notice that stopping place. This is the part of finding the edge. After you've done that, now you cultivate an attitude of stillness. This is challenging in our culture because our culture devalues stillness. It's like always, if you're not moving or you're not acting, then something is wrong. And that's not true of yin. In yin, we are actually going for stillness. What that just means is you find some place where you can stay for a while without a lot of jumping in and out of the posture. You can make adjustments here. You can adjust arms and legs. You can adjust head and neck. Maybe my head and neck is in pain, so I put some blocks underneath my head and my neck so it can be supported here. You come back to your breath. Use your breath to soften the muscle fiber so that the pressure of the posture can go into the connective tissue system, the joint capsules, and the ligaments and the fascia that's surrounding the muscle cells here. Otherwise, we'll try to stay here for about another minute and a half. Give yourself permission to come out early if you need to. So 1 or 2 minutes is quite a good long time to start out with. You can also give yourself permission to stay longer. Maybe you're really loving this pose and you'd like to stay 5-10 minutes in it. Then you can just pause the video or just ignore the video and just stay in the posture longer. Third principle is called time, and time is really what the power is behind yin, is once you've found a good edge. once you have dedicated yourself to being still and residing in the posture, then you stay for a while. And this is where we get the benefits of a yin practice, be they physical, but for a lot of us, more importantly, mental benefits. This is a mini meditation practice here. So we'll stay here for about 5 more breaths. You can go ahead and adjust your edge if you need to. If you're in pain, you come out completely, or maybe you back yourself off. If you're feeling nothing and you're just kind of taking a nap, that probably means you need to go a little deeper until you create more sensation that you can pay attention to. And then when you're feeling ready, you can bring yourself up. Maybe use your hands and your arms to help press your torso back up. Lengthen out through your torso to create space, because we were deliberately compressing the front of the spinal column there. Maybe even do some gentle twists to work out the kinks here. Probably a lot of us are done with the half frog leg. So lean back so that you can release the half frog leg. Maybe extend both legs forward. Maybe point and flex the feet a few times. Bob your knees up and down. Shake them from side to side. And we'll go, if you need a little bit longer to reverberate from all the kinks that developed there, then go ahead and do that. I'll start showing you the next yin posture. So instead of doing the other side of half frog, like I said before, we'll do some other asymmetrical postures. This next one is called shoelace. So for shoelace, bend the right knee, stack the right knee on top of the left knee, bend the left knee, and bring that heel on the outside of the right hip. So you're trying to stack these knees here as best you can. Now you're not going for pain here, so if it means they have to be a little bit unstacked and not be in pain, that's perfectly good for this practice here. Some of us, shoelace doesn't fit us, so maybe square pose works instead. Or if neither shoelace or square pose doesn't work, you can try eye of the needle. And so for eye of the needle, you'll make your way onto your back, bend both knees, and then bring the right knee out wide, take the right ankle, put it on the left thigh, draw the left leg in. You can clasp your hands behind the left thigh or in front of the left shin here. So this is, you can adjust the pressure. By the way, some of us can just lie here with this foot on the ground, and this is a good enough stretch to just stay right here for a while. Otherwise, if shoelace is working for you, we'll add a lateral bend to this, and maybe a block will be handy here. So come back. So I'm coming back to shoelace here. And then from here, I'm going to place a block a little ways away from my right hip that I might want to use in this practice. Maybe you don't have a block, so you can maybe get some books here, place them here. Grow up tall through your torso, and then laterally bend over to the right side, any amount, just as far as you go here. Maybe you start out with that right hand on the floor to kind of brace you, and just see how this feels here. So this is with the lateral bend here. Maybe you can go farther and farther. You just keep releasing until you stop. You want to keep a nice stable seat, so if you're tipping over, then that's too far. Then you're not bending, you're tipping here. Maybe your head and neck don't like to hang like this, so this is where the block is handy. You place the block where you can put your elbow on it, and then you can rest your head on the block. Because the emphasis of the lateral bend is to get a bend in the spine, maybe the outsides of the torso here. You can do whatever you want to with this left hand, so you can just hang out, hang it behind you, you can hang it overhead. We will be here for probably 3.5 minutes. So if hanging this arm somewhere gets tedious after a while, go ahead and just let it down here. And again, the head and neck can be supported. If it feels fine for the head and the neck, maybe you can just let it Just let it hang loose here. So find your pose, come back, notice your natural breath. Notice the pressures, the sensations, the tractions that this posture is generating. If they're appropriate and acceptable, that doesn't mean comfortable. Appropriate and acceptable just means you know you're not creating injury and trauma. And then you stay for a while. So I'm recording this video in the fall in the Northern Hemisphere, and this time of year there are several constellations rising, and in fact some that are even pretty much in the sky all of the time. I talked a little bit about the constellation Pegasus, the winged horse, and right next to Pegasus there's another constellation known as Andromeda. In fact, Andromeda, stars from Andromeda and Pegasus make up an asterism known as the Great Square. They're not the brightest stars, but they are bright. So on a nice clear night, you can easily pick out stars in the constellation Pegasus and in the constellation Andromeda. Turns out there's a whole host of constellations that are dedicated to figures in this one particular Greek mythological story. And Pegasus and Andromeda are two of them. In fact, the whole story kind of revolves around Andromeda. And Andromeda was a princess of Ethiopia. And it's a story where she's at the center of the story. Pegasus is involved. Turns out there's a whole host of other constellations that are named after characters and figures of the story. Cephas is a constellation, Cassiopeia is a constellation, Perseus is there, Thetis is there. All of these are constellations that point to this one particular story in Greek mythology here. And the stars, the constellations are littered in the night sky, particularly this time of year. There's nothing particularly characteristic about the constellation of Andromeda. Like I said, it has some nice 2 magnitude stars in it. What's the greatest feature of the Andromeda constellation is that it's the area of the sky where you can see one of the most famous galaxies because it's close and it's bright, the Andromeda galaxy. If you have a dark sight and you have good vision, you can actually see this galaxy with the naked eye. You don't need, although you can see it better with binoculars or a telescope, but you can actually see it with the unaided eye. And it's the closest galaxy to our own Milky Way that looks similar to the Milky Way. So we're about ready to come out of this posture. If you've been doing the lateral bend the whole time, you're feeling pretty achy, use the muscles in this supporting arm, put your hand on the floor and use it to kind of prop yourself back up. Once you're up, maybe you need to do a little bit of wiggling around to work out the stagnation of that posture. And then you'll come out of shoelace. So put your hands on the floor behind your hips, lean back, and then slowly unlace your shoelace here. And then do whatever kind of little motions you would like to do to work out the kinks. For these outside hip openers, my personal favorite is windshield wipers. But you might have some other kind of exercise. Maybe you'd like to do cat and cow or maybe some kind of a twist. Then go ahead and do that here. And then we'll get set up for the next yin posture. The next yin posture is known as twisting dragon pose here. And maybe a block or 2 might be handy. Or again, some books if you don't have yoga blocks here. Make your way onto hands and knees. So dragon pose is this low lunge. You'll bring your left foot up in between your hands, maybe inch the right knee back, and if that back knee and that back ankle are in pain, that means maybe lots of extra padding underneath that back ankle or that back knee. Put it under the shin for extra padding here. So this is basic dragon pose. This is the yin posture, and you just kind of sink and settle here. I'll do a variation known as twisting dragon. And for twisting dragon, you basically bring your right forearm on down to the ground so that you twist your torso to the left. And then the left hand and arm can do whatever is accessible here. I usually hug my left knee with my left arm. You can do other things with your left arm. It can just hang, or this is essentially twisting dragon. Now, your head doesn't have to be turned to the side. It can be in whatever position is most comfortable. So it can just hang like this. Maybe put a block underneath your head and your neck so that it can be supported. Maybe your forearm doesn't reach the ground. So this is why maybe a block is handy here. Now, dragon and twisting dragon may not be for all of us. So an alternative to dragon or twisting dragon is, I call it upside down dragon, but it's just another name for half happy baby pose. So you can make your way onto hands and knees, or make your way onto your back, right leg's extended, and draw the left knee in toward your torso. And you can just hug the left knee, and if that's intense, that's where you stay. This is your dragon posture. Or you can go a little bit deeper by bringing this knee out towards your left armpit. You can raise the shin so that the heel and the bottom of the foot point up towards the ceiling, and you can gently clasp the foot with your hands if you can reach it, or you can just keep holding on to the ankle. And then the idea is to let that whole leg sink towards the floor here. Otherwise, we'll stay in twisting dragon for a few more minutes here. But remember, this is not a competition, so you don't stay here. If you need to come out early, please do so. If you want to stay longer, please do so. I'll stay here a few more minutes. Notice your breath. Notice your sensations. So that's the core of the practice, is actually noticing your internal landscape rather than just listening to me. I'm kind of helping to pass time with these stories that I tell during the practice here. So back to the Andromeda Galaxy for just a moment. The Andromeda Galaxy is the closest neighbor to the Milky Way. That's a spiral galaxy like the Milky Way. And it's about the same size as the Milky Way, only our own Milky Way is a little bit larger. And we can see it with the naked eye, and yet the Andromeda Galaxy is so large that its actual distance from us is 250 million light years. Translated into time, the light that you see with your own eye when you gaze at Andromeda Galaxy takes 2.5 million years to get here. So what we're seeing is light that's 2.5 million years old, or it was 2.5 million years ago that the starlight from Andromeda left. We now see with our own eye. Having said that, I will now segue into the reason everything is called Andromeda, where the word Andromeda comes from, and that comes from this old Greek, this ancient Greek mythological story. And the story starts out in an ancient kingdom. Now the kingdom happens to be at the edge of the known world, at world's end. And in the ancient Greek Empire, it was kind of the end of their extent of their knowledge of the world. This means they were probably thinking about areas of the world such as India or mid-African countries. And so one form of the word for the world's end in Greek mythology is Ethiopia. That's where the word Ethiopia comes from, and that's why when this story is classically told, it's saying this kingdom is the kingdom of Ethiopia here. And at the time of the telling of this story, the kingdom was ruled by a king and queen. The king is known as Cephas, and the queen was Cassiopeia. And they ruled this ancient, distant kingdom. They had one daughter. They had a young daughter by the name of Andromeda. And The queen, not being allowed to do any of the ruling herself, Cassiopeia, all her time, all the resources of the palace and of the kingdom that she had to her disposal, she put into the raising and the caring of this daughter. And that made her very proud to the point of arrogant. So just a couple more breaths here. And then, if you're in half happy baby, you can start coming out of that. If you're in twisting dragon, maybe slowly bring yourself up to normal dragon. From normal dragon, a couple ways to come out of dragon. You can do this dramatically by maybe pressing yourself up into downward facing dog. Or you can maybe keep that left foot forward, lean back to lengthen out through the left leg. Maybe that feels good too. Or maybe neither one of those sounds terribly interesting. So you come out your own way. Just be slow and deliberate here. And then take some time to work out the kinks. The next posture that's coming up is, for a lot of us, can be a pretty dramatic posture. It's known as saddle pose. So I'll demonstrate saddle pose here. And there'll be an alternative. The alternative is Sphinx pose, and I'll demonstrate Sphinx once I get done demonstrating saddle pose. But if you know Sphinx and you love Sphinx pose, you can just go right into Sphinx pose. So for saddle pose, you start sitting on or in between your heels. So there are different variations here. So I'm sitting on my heels. I'm sitting in between my heels. I'm sitting on my heels, maybe knees are out wide. So maybe one of these positions work better for you. Maybe a little bit of height works. So maybe in between my heels with a slight bit of height under my hips here. None of this is working for you, and by that I mean if this is creating sharp biting, burning pain in these joints, then maybe try Sphinx here, or wait for Sphinx. The next stage to saddle pose is to maybe slowly lean back. By the way, you can just stay here and this can be your saddle pose. Or you can actually try to maneuver yourself back as far as you go. Again, we're moving by feel here. So you move slowly so that you stop when you feel enough pressure. You can maybe say, okay, this is enough. Maybe some folks can move all the way back down to the floor. Most of us probably don't make it down here. Notice my knees floated off of the floor. That's okay as long as they don't hurt. And for me, they don't hurt, so it's okay for my knees to float, but it might not be okay for yours. If you would like to go back and be supported by something, this is where you bring in props. So a yoga bolster is usually really handy. Or maybe 3 yoga bolsters. Maybe most of us don't have 3 yoga bolsters. So maybe a yoga bolster and a pillow, and then you just slowly find your stopping point here. So this is full saddle. And if this is pretty intense for a lot of people because it counteracts it's back bend, and it's pulling on all this fascia that runs down our psoas, front of our hips, into our upper thighs, and we're feeling that. If that's pretty uncomfortable, not painful, that's okay, but if it translates to pain in the knees or the ankles, then maybe that's a little bit too much. So if it is, an alternative is Sphinx pose. And for Sphinx, you'll make your way onto your belly, legs extended out behind you. Bring your elbows underneath your torso, about shoulder width apart. And then relax your torso, let your spine sag, and just enjoy this back bend. Find your version of it. So maybe you do a little bit less of a back bend. Maybe you come up into seal pose if you want a really dramatic back bend. But you can stay here in Sphinx. Head can be up, head can hang, head can be on a prop here. So Sphinx, nice alternative here. Otherwise, we'll move back into saddle pose here. And we'll stay for a couple more minutes or so. Or at least I will. You have to judge from your own sensations whether you stay or whether you come out here. But the idea is to come back to your breath and to try to relax, trying being the difficult word, because we might be feeling this in our low back, or we might be feeling this in the fronts of our thighs. I don't really know where you're feeling it because each of us is unique. And then we reside here. So back to Ethiopia, and to the king and queen and the princess. Well, when the princess became a young woman, the queen was so arrogantly proud of her daughter that in her hubris she openly proclaimed that Andromeda was more beautiful than the Nereids. Now the Nereids were sea nymphs in Greek mythology. They were these magical creatures that were descended from the gods. And one thing that you do not do in ancient Greek mythology is insult or challenge anyone or anything having to do with the gods. And Cassiopeia had just done that. And so the Nereids were not impressed. They were greatly offended. And so they appealed to their grandfather, who was the mighty Greek god Poseidon, the god of the sea. In the Greek pantheon of gods, he was a major dude. He was almost as powerful as Zeus himself. And so they appealed to Poseidon to do something, to punish. He asked him to punish the kingdom of Ethiopia for their great offense, their great transgression. And so Poseidon, obliging, decided to send the great sea monster, whose name was Cetus, by the way, Cetus the sea monster. He was going to send the sea monster to wreak havoc and to destroy the entire kingdom of Ethiopia. So we have about 2 or 3 more breaths here in the saddle pose. Then when you're feeling ready to come out, there's no easy way out of saddle pose, so you have to just maybe take your arms, place them on either side of your torso. Engage the front line of your muscles, so your core muscles, your abdomen, to kind of just stabilize everything. And then take your time to grunt and groan and slowly make your way up and out of saddle pose. And again, this is not a fast-moving practice, so give yourself some time and space to get out of this posture. If you were in Sphinx pose, lower yourself down, maybe move back into child's pose. Maybe if you were in saddle foot pose, you need to really extend out each leg. So maybe do that one at a time. You can do that also through things like downward facing dog or core engaging postures. Like, I call this crocodile pose. This is a forearm plank pose here. You only have to do that for a little while to just kind of get the blood circulating back into your legs here. And that was the symmetric middle posture of this flower sequence. So now we're going to get to the other side of all of those postures that we did before here. So we do it in reverse order, much like the 3-part breath here. Now it's the 3-part yin yoga sequence here. So we do the other side. We'll do the other side of twisting dragon first here. So when you feel ready, come back to hands and knees. Bring the right foot up between your hands, inch the left knee back. And again, if this is feeling like it's not accessible for you, you can try upside down dragon or half happy baby on this side. You can stay in regular dragon. Remember, you can use all the padding you want to under that back knee or ankle if you need to. Or you can try twisting dragon. So twisting dragon, bring your forearm down onto the floor or onto a block. The left forearm and then the right arm maybe hugs the right knee here. Coming into a slight twist in twisting dragon. And then we'll stay here for a few more minutes here in twisting dragon here. Remember to breathe. Remember to notice your sensations here. So, Thetis was heading towards the coast of Ethiopia to wreak certain doom upon the kingdom. It takes him a while. Big, slow sea monster. So they had some time. The king of Ethiopia, Cephas, understood the impending doom that was coming, and so he went to consult an oracle to try to figure out some plan if there was any way he could save his kingdom. And the oracle told him, well, he says, there is only one way that you can save the kingdom. You're going to have to sacrifice your daughter, Andromeda, to the sea monster, to Cephas. It's the only other thing that you can do. And of course, Cephas, the king of Ethiopia, decided, well, I guess that's the only thing I can do. So that's what he did. So they took Andromeda and they shackled her to a rock right next to the coast, so that the sea monster would just come and kill her, and through that act of sacrifice, save the entire Ethiopian population here. And so this is where we leave poor Andromeda, who had no say into what's going on so far. She's left just lying by the shoreline with two kind of metal shackles around both arms that attach to the rock. Need to break here and talk about a different story. And this, we bring in the hero Perseus. So, meanwhile, while all of this is going on, there's a Greek hero named Perseus. Now, Perseus is the son of Zeus, so he's kind of half human, half god, one of these Greek gods in Greek mythology, similar to Hercules. And Perseus has just finished vanquishing this demon gorgon known as Medusa. He cut off her head, which, if you gaze upon it, turns anything into stone. And she's bringing the head back. By the way, when he killed her, the blood of Medusa formed the winged horse Pegasus. And so Perseus took Pegasus as his ride, and he's taking the head of Medusa back to wherever he's from, flying on the winged horse Pegasus. And as he's doing so, he's flying over the country of Ethiopia. We have maybe a couple more breaths here in twisting dragon. And as he's flying over Ethiopia, he notices the giant sea monster Cetus approaching the coast, and he notices poor Andromeda chained there to a rock next to the coast. One more breath here. And then slowly make your way out, however you would like. Maybe do this slowly and work out the kinks of the posture here. Maybe you can do a few rounds of cat and cow. Maybe you like downward facing dog. Again, sometimes it feels nice to slowly extend the legs and maybe do a little bit of yang movement after all that yin stillness. After you've done that, slowly settle yourself down into the next posture, which is the other side of shoelace with the lateral bend. So if you need to sit up on some height, find your height. Extend both legs out in front. Maybe have a block handy if you want to lean onto a block or some books here. So this time, bend the left knee, stack the left knee on top of the right knee, bend the right knee, bring the right knee around. And if this doesn't work, the other versions are square, eye of the needle on the other side. Find your version of this pose. Grow up tall through your torso. Now we'll laterally bend over to the other side. So you can laterally bend to the left, and you can either just place your hand on the floor here. Your head and neck and torso can just hang. Again, we're going for a lateral bend here, not a tipping. So if you feel this sits bones, feel yourself kind of tipping over, that's not the point to the posture. So maybe back yourself off, or use a prop to kind of steady yourself, and you can also use it to just kind of hang your head here. And don't worry about how far you go again. You're just going to your own stopping point. Maybe you don't go very far. Maybe you go this far, and this is perfectly fine. Or maybe you have your shoulder all the way down onto the floor. Depends on your own particular range of motion. We'll stay here for a few more minutes on this side here. So, riding high in the sky on his noble steed, Pegasus, the winged horse, Perseus looks down and he sees Andromeda, and he's captivated by her. And so he has an idea. So he flies all the way down. He flies right back by Andromeda, and he flies to the palace, to the castle where the king and the queen reside. He lands Pegasus in the courtyard, and he calls for an audience with the king and the queen to negotiate a marriage between him and Andromeda. The negotiation and the deal being that he will vanquish, he will conquer the sea monster Cetus if he's allowed to marry Andromeda. While this conversation and this negotiation going on, meanwhile, Andromeda is waiting there at the seashore, waiting for the sea monster to come in, and she starts to see the sea monster coming in from the distance. So, as she's watching her impending doom, she starts to think about her metal shackles. And the interesting thing about them is they weren't made very well. They're very thick. They're different sizes, and obviously one of them was meant for someone who was much bigger than she was. And so she realized that if she could manipulate her wrist and her hand, possibly she could slip out of one of the shackles. And in fact, after working on it for a few minutes, she actually did work one of her hands out of the shackle, and it was now free. But unfortunately, the other metal shackle was a little bit smaller, and she couldn't quite get her wrist out of that one. So she only freed herself from one shackle here. Now she was doing this, curiously, a dolphin approached and peered out of the water, watched Andromeda for a while, and then the dolphin began to speak to Andromeda in Andromeda's own language. The dolphin said, "Hi, I notice you're in kind of a predicament. My name is Dolphinus, and I'm a magical dolphin. My magical power, of course, is that I can speak all languages, including yourself. And I just wanted to meet you." And Andromeda started talking back to the dolphin. Andromeda said, "Well, hi, I'm Andromeda. I'm the princess of Ethiopia, and I'm about to be sacrificed to a giant sea monster." And Dolphinus replied back, and he says, "Oh yes, I know all about the sea monster. Talking to her a few minutes ago, and yeah, she's on her way." And she says, "Oh really? You can talk to the sea monster?" And the dolphin says, "Well, yes, I can talk to anybody." And as they were talking, the sea monster arrives. Cetus is there, and And Andromeda said, "Well, can you talk to the sea monster now?" And the dolphin said, "Sure. Just one more breath here on this side. And then when you're ready, plant your hand and bring yourself all the way back up. Take your time to work out some kinks. If you're done with half shoelace, undo the shoelace legs and do whatever you need to do to feel the stiffness, the stuckness, the reverberation from that pose. Again, I kind of like to do windshield wipers. You might develop your own counter pose measures to just take a break between these long yin postures. And then we're finally coming back to the last petal of the flower, which in this case is the other side of half frog. So legs extended out long initially, and then you'll bend the right leg and bring the right heel on the outside of the right hip, maybe right knee's out wide, and I'll just remind you again, if that doesn't fit your body, try half butterfly instead, where the heel's on the inside of the hip rather than the outside of the hip. Left leg comes out wide. Put padding where you might need it. You can stay seated here if you're getting not enough of a leg and a hip stretch here, or you fold forward over the left leg just as far as you go until you feel stopped. And then you stay here for a few more minutes. Always give yourself the power and the permission to come out whenever you feel like you are done. So to really make these practices useful to us, we have to make them unique to our own bodies here. So that's always something to keep in mind here. Back to the story. So Cetus comes up to the shoreline, and Andromeda, through using Dolphinus as a translator, so she's kind of talking to the dolphin talks to the sea monster talks back to the dolphin and talks to Andromeda. All kind of really complicated, but they're kind of getting the hang of it. And she asks the dolphin to ask the sea monster, she's like, are you really here to kill me? And so the dolphin asks Cetus, and Cetus replies, well, right, I work for Poseidon, and Poseidon set me on this job. Poseidon said, destroy Ethiopia. Unless, of course, their princess is on the shore, in which case you can just kill her and then you can leave the rest of it alone. So that's my job. And Andromeda replies, you kind of sound like it's just a job. And the sea monster says, well, of course, it's just, right, I don't really do this stuff. It's just like, I just got an order from Poseidon and I got to do what Poseidon ever says. And Andromeda thought about this for a while, and she said, well, do you really have to do what Poseidon tells you? And what would happen, and she said, tell me this, what would happen if you didn't do what Poseidon told you to do? And the sea monster thought about this for a while. And then she looked back at Andromeda and she says, well, I don't think anything would happen. I just wouldn't work for Poseidon anymore. Andromeda says, curious. You know, I'm not really interested in doing what my mom and dad want me to do either. She says, all it's gotten me is tied to this, is bound to this rock to be sacrificed to you, this great sea monster. And so the more they talked, the more they realized they had a little bit in common with each other. And after they talked for a while, Andromeda said, well, I don't really want you to kill me. And I don't really want you to destroy my kingdom, she said, but can you do me a favor? She said, I still got one wrist stuck in this shackle, and I was wondering if you could actually just kind of yank the chain off from the stone so I could be free of these bounds. Again, talking through Dolphinus. Dolphinus translates it to Cetus decides, well, okay. So Cetus takes one of its great claws on its arm and just kind of like easily breaks the steel chain off so that now Andromeda is completely free. And Andromeda says, you know, I know of this little island that my parents took me to as a child. If you would bring me there, we could all just go and chill there, and we don't have to be part of this mess that's going on in Ethiopia. And they all agreed to it, the sea monster, Dolphinus, and Andromeda. So Andromeda crawled onto the back of Cetus, and they just basically swam away towards this little island that Andromeda knew about. So just about 5 more breaths in half frog, if that's okay. If it's not okay, come out now. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Perseus, Cephas, and Cassiopeia were finishing up their negotiations, their prenuptial agreements, and all the arrangements for Perseus to marry Andromeda and to vanquish the monster. When they got done, they decided to go to the shore to watch Perseus be the hero that he is and to vanquish the evil great sea monster. And when they got to the shore, they found no one there. There was no sea monster. There was no dolphin. There was no Andromeda. Just the peaceful sea, slowly moving in, slowly moving out, the surf and the sunset. And they were all a little bit in shock and confused because everyone had left. Just a couple more breaths here. When you're ready, bring yourself all the way up. Maybe lean back to release the right leg. Point and flex the feet a few times. And then from here, make your way gently onto your back. So that was the last long-held yin posture. Next, just a little bit of integration before we settle down into final shavasana here. So when you get onto your back, maybe bend your knees, draw your knees into your chest, give your knees a nice hug, maybe rock from side to side. Give your knees and your legs a big thank you for all the work they did. And then we'll try a twist. So with your knees bent and in towards your torso, gently lower your knees over to the right side. So we want a spinal twist here, which means the left shoulder is trying to ooze back towards the ground, just so that you know you're in a spinal twist. Here, head can be neutral, or you can turn your neck to the left to get a complete spinal twist. And just stay here, a couple of breaths here. And then on your next inhale, bring your knees back up to center. Maybe give them another hug if you want to. Now we're moving to the other side, so gently lower your knees over to the other side. Right shoulder trying to stay close to the ground. Maybe extend the right arm out. You can even look down that right arm here. Or keep your head neutral if you wish here. And just stay here. One or two more breaths. And then the next inhale, bring your knees back up to center. Maybe some final integration movement here before moving yourself into your comfortable, supported and secure resting position. It might look like a traditional shavasana position where you're just lying on your back, arms and legs extended. Maybe you need to sit in a quiet meditative posture. Maybe you have another restorative posture that you've been thinking about. If that's the case, then maybe that's your shavasana position. Again, you can make this comfortable and accessible if you have props lying around. Maybe if you're chilly, cover yourself with a blanket for warmth. Maybe bend your knees. Place something underneath your knees to release the backs of your legs, to release your low back. If you're hanging out here in a more traditional shavasana form. And then begin to soften. Soften the tension in your head. Soften your eye sockets. Release your jaw and your tongue. Soften the skin around each ear, your left ear, your right ear. Use your breath to do this softening and go deep, which means go right into your very brain and your very thoughts. Let your thoughts be soft. Oh, they'll be there. But soft thoughts are thoughts that are free of judgment, free of criticism, no matter what the nature of the thoughts are. So you let them just be fuzzy, float in and float out. Soften the space between your eyes and your forehead. Notice the air moving in and out of either your nose or your mouth. Eyes can be closed, or eyes can just simply be soft, gazing at whatever they're gazing at. soften through the rest of your torso. So collarbones are released, shoulders are relaxed, upper ribs are releasing, and then the arms are softened. So right arm, right palm, right fingers releasing, left arm, left palm, left fingers softening. And then maybe for a moment bring your attention to the tips of each finger on each hand and see if you can notice the life energy, the sense of awakeness in the tips of each finger. I always say it feels like a light tingling sensation, but maybe for you it has a different kind of texture. Notice that. Each finger, both hands. Continue to bring some awareness and softness through the rest of your torso. You have your breath there to do that. Soften down through your hips, through your thighs. Release your knees, your shins, tops and bottoms of your feet, ankles, and the tips of your toes on both feet. Bring your attention again to the tips of your toes, each toe, each foot. See if you can notice that same gentle light energy tingling clear down there in the tips of your toes. That's you. That's your life force. That's your manifestation. Clear down there in the tips of your toes. Release, relax, and surrender your body-mind 100%. And then visualize yourself basking on a nice warm rock next to the ocean. Sunset. All is quiet. Only thing that's going on right now is your breath and the ocean surf rolling in and rolling out. And what you notice is the ocean surf is exactly synchronized with your own breath. So every time you inhale, you can hear the ocean surf rolling in. And every time you exhale, the ocean surf quietly rolls out. At some point, begin to deepen your breath. You can start to make small motions with fingers and toes. You can start slowly moving wrists and ankles around. Maybe rock your head from side to side. If you were lying on the floor in Shavasana here, maybe begin to move arms and move legs. At some point, gently bend your knees. Roll over onto one side. When you get there, maybe stay there long enough to thank yourself for your practice, but also to thank yourself for you, your unique, powerful manifestation in this universe. The universe is ecstatically joyful that you are here. And then when you're feeling ready, bring yourself up. Find a comfortable seat. Feel rooted, feel stable. Roll your torso expansive so that you can breathe, and then bring your hands together in front of heart center. So I'll end practice with an Om. You can just listen or maybe join in. Om. The inner light in me honors. The inner light in you